There's a type of person you've encountered in life and could never quite explain. They smile at the right moment. They say the right words. On the surface, they seem kind, interested, even spiritual. But something within you, an ancient and silent part, always knew something was wrong there. You tried to ignore it. You tried to rationalize it. You called it a difficult personality, trauma, or an avoidant attachment style. But what if the explanation was never in conventional psychology? What if this feeling of emptiness you experience around certain people isn't a matter of character, but a matter of origin? Dolores Cannon, one of the most respected past-life regression hypnotherapists of the 20th century, spent over 40 years conducting deep hypnotic sessions with thousands of people worldwide. And at a certain point in her research, a pattern began to repeat so consistently, in so many different sessions with people who had never met, that she could no longer ignore it. Under a deep trance state, where the conscious mind loses control of the narrative, and what emerges comes from a much older layer of consciousness, several people began to independently describe the existence of human bodies that do not house what we might call an evolutionary soul. Bodies that walk, talk, work, get married, raise children, but that, on the inside, function in a fundamentally different way from the rest of us. Before you decide whether you believe this or not, I need to ask you something. Don't close the video yet. Because regardless of your spiritual beliefs, what you're about to hear in the next few minutes will give you a new vocabulary to describe people you already know, people who leave you exhausted for no apparent reason, people who promise to change and never do, people who say, "I love you" with their mouths, but who, at no point, have ever made you feel truly seen. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. Let's start with the foundation of it all, because without understanding the basis of the theory, the 5 characteristics that follow will sound like isolated accusations, and that's not the intention here. Dolores Cannon described, based on what repeatedly emerged in her hypnosis sessions, Earth as a kind of spiritual school. Not in the poetic and vague sense that this expression is normally used, but almost structurally. An environment of extreme density, of physical and emotional resistance, designed for souls in the process of evolution to learn, through pain, choice, and consequence, lessons that would not be possible to learn on subtler planes. According to this view, you, me, and most people you know are here for exactly this reason: to evolve, to make mistakes, to feel genuine remorse, to feel genuine love, and to grow through this friction. But according to the accounts gathered by Cannon, not every human body in this school would be occupying a student's seat. Some bodies, from this perspective, exist to fulfill other functions within the system. Not necessarily evil in the cartoonish sense of a movie villain, but structurally different, lacking the evolutionary spark that generates genuine empathy, genuine remorse, and genuine growth. Think of it like a background extra versus a main actor. The extra moves, speaks, occupies space, but they are not there to develop an arc. They are there for the scenery to work. And it is precisely this mixture, this coexistence within the same physical space, between souls that evolve and beings that do not evolve, that demands something from you that almost no one has taught you to develop: spiritual discernment. Not paranoid distrust of everyone, not the belief that the world is hostile, but the fine, almost surgical ability to perceive when a connection is real and when it is merely a well-rehearsed simulation of connection. And it is precisely this distinction between the real and the simulated which leads us to the first and second characteristics that Dolores Cannon described. The first thing you need to learn to observe is the absence of true empathy. And here's the detail that most people get completely wrong. These people don't seem cold. They don't walk around expressionless, unreactive, like an old movie robot. On the contrary, they are often the ones who cry the most at the right moment, who make the most touching comment at a funeral, who seem to understand exactly what you're feeling when you're falling apart inside. The problem isn't the absence of emotional reaction. The problem is the origin of that reaction. Think of it this way. There's a difference between a musician who feels the music in their soul and plays from impulse, and a musician who has memorized every note of a score and plays it with technical perfection, but has never felt the emotion that music is supposed to carry. From the outside, To an inattentive listener, the two might sound almost the same, but someone who lives closely, who observes for long enough, begins to notice that the second person is always a step behind, always calculating what the expected reaction is instead of simply feeling and reacting. This is exactly how the absence of true empathy works in these people. They have learned throughout their lives what the correct emotional scripts are for each situation. They know that when someone loses a relative, the correct thing to do is to hug them and say, "I'm sorry." They know that when a friend is sad, the correct thing to do is to make a concerned face and ask, "Are you okay?" But these reactions don't stem from an internal place of genuine connection with the other's pain. They stem from a calculation, often so quick and automated that the person themselves doesn't even realize they are calculating. It's learned behavior, imitated, strategically reproduced, not a felt emotion. And here's the most disturbing detail. You, on the other side of this relationship, feel this in your body before you can explain it with words. Have you ever had the experience of confiding something deeply painful to someone, and in the middle of the conversation, feeling a strange emptiness, as if you were talking to a wall that returns the right echo, but never absorbs the sound? That feeling of something's not right is your discernment system trying to warn you about something your rational mind hasn't yet processed. The second characteristic goes hand in hand with the first, and is perhaps even more dangerous, because it involves these people's relationship with truth. For most of us, lying causes discomfort. There's a small emotional cost in saying something we know isn't true, an internal friction, a pang of guilt, even when the lie is small and seemingly harmless. This friction exists because, for an evolving soul, truth has moral value. Lying hurts something inside us because it damages our own integrity. But according to the accounts collected by Dolores canon, for these specific beings, truth and lies do not carry this moral weight. They are merely tools. A hammer doesn't feel guilt for hitting a nail, and a lie, for these people, is used with the same functional neutrality as a hammer. If the lie serves to achieve the goal, it is used. If the truth serves better at the moment, the truth is used. There is no internal commitment to either. There is only the silent question, what works best now? This explains why, when you finally confront one of these people with an obvious, proven, undeniable lie, their reaction is almost never genuine shame. It's strategic adjustment. They will reframe the story, blame you for misunderstanding, create a new narrative with the same ease as someone changing clothes. There's no internal breakdown moment you'd expect to see in someone who truly cares about the truth. There's only the search for the next version of the story that resolves the immediate problem. And here I need to ask you something, because it's important that you feel this and not just hear it. Have you ever felt crazy for questioning your own perception after confronting someone with a clear lie, and that person manages somehow to convince you that you are the one who is mistaken? If so, comment below with the word "I perceive," because that means your intuition was already picking up a signal that your mind didn't yet have the vocabulary to name. This comment isn't just about engagement. It's a symbolic record that you are awakening this discernment within yourself, right now, as you listen to this. Now that you understand the first two signs, emotional emptiness disguised as empathy, and the strategic relationship with truth, we need to talk about what happens when you are already in a relationship with one of these people. And here, things get more serious, because the third characteristic isn't about perception, it's about energetic survival. According to the vision presented by Dolores canon, these people build bonds that function in practice as parasitic systems. I am not using this word lightly. I am using it because it is the one that best describes the pattern. A parasite in nature does not invade its host violently and obviously right away. It settles in gradually, in such a way that the host doesn't even realize it's being drained, until the exhaustion is already installed and too deep to be ignored. Think about how these relationships usually begin. In the beginning, there is an overwhelming intensity. This person gives you an attention that seems too rare to be true. They ask about your dreams, about your old wounds, about your deepest fears, and seem genuinely fascinated by your every answer. You feel, perhaps for the first time in a long time, completely seen. This is the moment when most people completely let down their guard. However, little by little, something starts to change direction. What was interest in your inner world starts silently to turn into extraction. They start to need your energy, your attention, your validation, your resources with increasing frequency. And if you hesitate to provide this, something strange happens. They don't simply accept your boundary. They react. It can be with sudden withdrawal, with theatrical sadness, with subtle accusations that you have changed, that you are not the same as before. This mechanism has a very specific function, to make you feel guilty for having set a boundary, and thus return the flow of energy to them. Over time, this creates a cycle. You give, they receive. You try to pull back, they intensify the emotional pressure. You give in again, the cycle repeats, and with each turn of this cycle, your personal boundaries become weaker, more porous, until you barely recognize where you end and their need begins. And the cruelest part of all this is that, from the outside, to friends and family who don't live this relationship up close, everything seems fine, because the manipulation used by these beings, according to this theory, is rarely crude. It is subtle, intelligent, specifically adapted to your weak points. And if you are listening to this now and feeling your stomach tighten because you recognized someone in your life, breathe. This doesn't mean you are weak. It means you have a heart capable of genuine love, and it is precisely this capacity that this type of bond knows how to exploit. Recognizing the pattern is already the first step to interrupting it, and that's what we'll talk about further in this video. Now, there is a question that naturally arises when someone understands these first three signs. But can't these people change? Can't they evolve, dedicate themselves to spirituality, go to therapy, truly transform? And it is precisely this question that leads us to the fourth characteristic described by Dolores Cannon. According to the theory, these beings can indeed study spirituality. They can read the same books you read. They can attend retreats, meditate, go to therapy, adopt an entire vocabulary of healing, of inner work, of higher consciousness. But, and here's the central point, all of this is absorbed at the level of vocabulary and external behavior, never at the level of internal structure. It's like memorizing the words of a language without ever learning the grammar that underpins the meaning behind them. Imagine a person who learns to say perfect phrases in a foreign language, memorized word for word, but if you change the context of the conversation even slightly, they freeze because they don't understand the structure. They only memorized the surface. This is exactly how the spiritual growth of these people works. They can repeat phrases like, "I'm working on my triggers," or "I'm healing myself," but the underlying behavioral pattern, that same cycle of manipulation, energy extraction, and absence of real empathy, remains absolutely intact beneath the new vocabulary. In practice, what changes over time is not the essence of the behavior, but the sophistication of the packaging. A person like this, 10 years ago, might have manipulated more obviously, more crudely. Today, after years of studying spirituality, they've learned to manipulate using the very vocabulary of healing against you. They might tell you you're projecting trauma when you point out a problematic behavior of theirs. They might tell you you're not vibrating high enough when you refuse to accept something harmful. The discourse has evolved. The structure underneath has not. And that's why, according to this view, trying to save or heal someone like this through your own effort, your patience, your unconditional love, is like trying to teach a fish to climb a tree. It's not a matter of insufficient effort on your part. It's a matter of a different structural nature. And truly understanding this is what frees many people from years of guilt for not having been able to help enough. We now come to the fifth and final characteristic, and perhaps it's the most painful of all for those who have experienced it up close, because it touches directly on the most vulnerable area of human experience: love. According to Dolores Cannon, these beings are structurally incapable of establishing what she describes as a soul-to-soul bond. This type of connection, the one most of us seek our entire lives, involves something that goes beyond physical attraction or compatibility of interests. It involves a deep, almost inexplicable recognition between two evolving consciousnesses. It is this type of love that makes you feel safe enough to be completely authentic, and that grows over time through shared difficulties. For these specific beings, this type of intimacy is simply not accessible. What they build in its place is a structure that imitates love on the surface, but which internally is sustained by other pillars: control, possession, convenience. They can say, "I love you" with impressive frequency. They can make grand gestures, buy expensive gifts, deliver emotional public declarations. But if you observe carefully, you'll notice that these gestures often happen precisely at the moments when you are pulling away, questioning the relationship, or threatening to break the bond. They are not spontaneous expressions of connection. They are retention tools. And there is an even more subtle detail: emotional mirroring. Many of these people are extremely talented at reflecting back to you exactly the kind of love you most desire to receive. If you value attention, they give you intense attention. If you value words of affirmation, they produce the perfect words. This happens because without their own internal compass of genuine love, they have learned to observe what the other person needs and return exactly that, like a well-polished mirror. Except no matter how perfect the reflection, a mirror will never generate its own light. It only gives back what already existed on the other side. And that's what explains why, after years beside someone like that, many people report the same feeling: deep loneliness even when in a relationship. Because deep down, a part of you always knew you were loving a reflection, not a real meeting of two souls. If you've ever felt this specific loneliness within a relationship where you should feel accompanied, comment, "I recognize this." You don't need to explain the details below. Just the act of naming it is part of the healing process, and I want you to know that this experience, however isolating it may have felt at the time, is extremely common, and you weren't exaggerating, and you weren't being too difficult in feeling this emptiness. Now, after exploring these 5 characteristics, there's a practical and urgent question that needs answering: what to do with this information? Because knowing the pattern without knowing what to do with it can only generate more fear and generalized mistrust, and that is in no way Dolores Cannon's proposal. The first central guidance is to develop discernment, not paranoia. There's a huge difference between observing patterns with clarity and starting to see a threat in every new person who enters your life. Spiritual discernment, according to this perspective, is a capacity that develops like a muscle, through silent observation, paying attention to the small details that don't add up, the courage to trust the discomfort the body feels even before the mind can rationally justify it. The second guidance is to trust your own intuition, even when it contradicts the narrative the person is telling you. If something within you senses a silent alert near someone, even without concrete proof, even without being able to explain exactly why, that feeling deserves space and respect. You don't need a court of evidence to distance yourself from something your own nervous system is signaling as incoherent. The third guidance, and perhaps the most practical of all, is the establishment of healthy and clear boundaries. This means stopping unlimited access to your emotional energy just because someone asked, cried, or promised to change. It means understanding that saying no to protect your energetic field is not cruelty, it's responsibility. Many people were taught to believe that unconditional love means infinite availability, but unconditional love for the other should never mean unconditional abandonment of oneself. And finally, the deepest guidance that emerges from this view is a shift in perspective about your own experience. Instead of seeing these encounters as bad luck, injustice, or proof that you attract the wrong people, the proposal is to see them as specific opportunities for personal evolution. Each relationship like this, however painful it may have been, taught you something about your own limits, about your own capacity for discernment, about the real value of your energy. You didn't go through this for nothing. You went through this to arrive at this exact moment, with this new clarity, capable of recognizing the pattern before it consumes you again. And here's the part I need you to listen to with your full attention, because it's the conclusion of everything we've discussed so far. You can close this video now, go back to your routine, and continue giving infinite benefit of the doubt to people who have never changed and never will. You can continue confusing mirroring with love and energy extraction with connection. That is a valid choice, and no one will force you to change anything. Or you can choose, starting now, to begin observing with the eyes that have just opened. Pay attention to who truly absorbs your pain with genuine empathy and who merely echoes the right response. Notice who keeps their word, even when no one is checking, and who treats truth as a disposable instrument. Realizing who gives you room to grow, and who keeps you small to continue feeding on your energy. This choice doesn't require heroic courage. It just requires honest attention, day after day, in the small interactions of your life. If you feel this video put into words something you already lived but could never name, comment EU Exergo Agora. Leave this comment as a symbolic milestone, the moment you decided to stop doubting your own perception and started trusting the discernment that was always within you waiting to be heard.